On Saturday, Middlesbrough make their way to Blackburn for the first away game of this season. Boro have only beaten Rovers 3 times in 10 years, and they've all been at Ewood Park, even though I've never seen any of them. I'm here with Blackburn Rovers reporter and co-host of the Championship podcast, Elliott, to give us the lowdown on Blackburn this season. Elliott, I want to take a step back before we go into the game on Saturday and look at the Venky's tenure in total. They have been in charge for just over 15 years now. It was 2 years in the top flight. Most of it's been in the Championship apart from that 1 year in League One. But could you give me a fan perspective, like a Blackburn fan perspective, on what the tenure's been like and how fans are feeling at the moment around their ownership?
Yeah. Hi, Jonny, first and foremost. Thanks for having me on. Where do we start with Rovers and Venky's? Well, obviously the 15-year tenure has been an absolute disaster, really. Blackburn, obviously, is a club that won the Premier League just over 30 years ago. Obviously, had their real, not the glory days, because I was obviously winning the Premier League, but had their heyday really in the 2000s. Obviously, growing up, myself certainly thought of Blackburn Rovers as a Premier League club, but very much punching above their weight in terms of obviously the population and relative size of the club without obviously the Jack Walker money, which accelerated them to win the Premier League. So to see the team sort of dismantled in the way it was, which many Blackburn Rovers fans see that as that was the case when Venky's did come in. And the decline's been obvious, they were a stable Premier League club. They took over in 2010, relegated in 2012, as you said, and then even relegated in 2017 into League One for 1 year before Tony Mowbray came in for the first time and saved them, really, and got them back out at the first time of asking. Flirted with the playoffs a few times, but have never actually finished in the playoffs since relegation, despite finishing 7th on a couple of occasions. And since Tony left, that's happened as well. But then, I've covered Blackburn for four full seasons, and they finished 7th, 19th, 7th, and 20th. So it's volatile. It's a roller coaster. The fans don't like the owners. The owners haven't been at a game since 2012 or 2013, one of the 2 years, can't remember, after a snowball was chucked at one of them. So it's very much, there's a lot of anger, but I think a lot of that anger's turned into apathy as the years have sort of gone on. And there's a lot of anger sort of directed at those running the football club day to day, because Venky's don't have any involvement in that. They have obviously there's a CEO now back at the club, which wasn't the case for the last year. But they have their own representative on the board who's the chief operating officer. And I think a lot of the fans mainly focus on those running the club rather than the owners at the minute, because the owners are just so disconnected in India. It's almost out of sight, out of mind a little bit in recent years. But ultimately, that underlying anger will always be there at the football club whenever Venky's are mentioned.
What do you think the Venky's are trying to get out of owning Blackburn then? Because if they're not there on the day-to-day, they're not having any association, is there much point of them owning Blackburn anymore?
No, that is the $1 million question. Why bother? Why bother owning a football club that costs you £20 million a year? That the fans don't like you, you're not welcome, you don't engage with in any way, shape, or form. It's an absolute mystery as to why Venky still own Blackburn. You always hear, in fact, to play a bit devil's advocate, they've always paid the bills. So first and foremost, I will say that. And the club that I support, Sheffield Wednesday, has been a complete car crash in the last 12 months of owners that don't pay the bills. And obviously we see what the repercussions of that are. So they have always paid the bills, I will say that first and foremost. But there's no ambition there. There's no love for the football club. It's very cold. And it just doesn't make any sense, as you say. And as a supporter, you're allowed to want more than just the bare minimum of the bills being paid, which they always do. But ultimately, you want drive, you want ambition, you want something you can relate to as something you put so much emotional standing into as a football supporter. So why they do it, we don't know. Whenever the question's been asked in terms of people that are connected with Venky's, the message just comes back, it's not for sale. The owners don't want to sell it. I don't know if it's a pride thing, maybe, because they've obviously been very successful with their businesses, which has given them such huge finance in terms of personal wealth. But maybe it's to do with that. But equally, the spending in terms of what they've spent on the football club outside of just covering the costs has definitely decreased in the last few years as well. So it's a bit of a mystery to everyone, really.
Yeah, with the regression of the ownership, what do you think the ambition is then? And obviously, I know Tony's came into the club this year. He's came back. I know naturally, O'Neill was the favoured candidate, but it just didn't really work out. But on the pitch, what do you think the ambition is?
I think ultimately the budgetary spend puts Blackburn Rovers in the bottom third of the league. I think if they don't do some serious transfer business in the next couple of weeks, it's very hard to argue that they won't be another bottom 6, bottom 8 team again, because in terms of budget, that's where they are. In terms of sort of attendance and size of the club, forgetting like the history, but I'm talking about, your gate receipts and natural organic revenue. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a bottom 6 championship club nowadays, bottom 8. So Tony will always strive for more. Tony said, they want to have a sniff of the playoffs. And that's why Tony's been brought in, really, because it's a squad that doesn't have buckets of championship experience in certain areas. It's got young players that need to be developed from the academy, which has always been a big part of Blackburn Rovers' DNA. And Tony's the perfect man to sort of bring a bit of stability, because there's been a lot of managerial changes in since Tony left. Really, they've been through 4 permanent head coaches. He's happy to develop young players, which is really important. And equally, he might be able to get more out of some of the players that are already existing in the squad when there isn't the finance to turn it over in the way that some supporters would like. So unless you're basically, with the business that's been done so far, and I do expect more before the end of the window, Rovers are basically banking on either Tony being able to get a lot more out of the players that we've currently seen in the last year, injuries being a lot better because they had a lot of problems with that last season. But otherwise, there isn't a lot of tangible evidence to suggest that they'll be any more than a top, a bottom 8 side, despite how good they were at Wolves equally.
Yeah, I was going to say I watched the game on the Friday night against Wolves, and I thought they were excellent, really good out of possession. They were able to catch Wolves on the break, and you could definitely see that Wolves' inefficiencies are in possession. And I think with Tony, his teams are always effective, and you would like to say that it probably would be hopefully a mid-table finish this year, if in the best case scenario. But I know Tony wasn't the first choice. Obviously, O'Neill definitely was. He had a really good run at the back end of last season, chose to stay with Northern Ireland. What do you think the fan perception of it was, where Tony was rumoured to take the job and then now he has took it? Could you walk me through what fans were feeling like when that was going on?
Yeah, it was a funny summer. So the impression and certainly the expectation was Michael O'Neill was going to stay. All the noises he was making and sort of things you hear from the background is there was a big expectation he was going to stay at the club. There was always a lucrative offer from Northern Ireland on the table for him to extend his stay there. Knew a decision was coming. In fairness, it was made early, but it was a bit of a shock when he decided to stay at Northern Ireland. I think ultimately, as we've seen play out with what's happened with the transfer business, there wasn't a lot of money to spend and a lot of room to really develop. And I think in the short term, I think that probably might have swayed Michael O'Neill, because he was definitely inclined to take the job, certainly at certain points during, particularly when they were on the good run and looked like they would stay up and be a championship club. In terms of Tony coming in, they really liked Slaven Bilic. He was probably the first choice after, obviously, the Michael O'Neill deal fell through. He, again, I think budgetary-wise, I think that put him off a little bit. He also, I was told very early on, he had his eye on an international job post-World Cup, and he's since obviously taken the role at Croatia, so I think that was kind of in the back of his mind as well. And then it kind of looked like Bilic, Challoner, who obviously left Stockport, or Mowbray, and the timings didn't quite align with Challoner. I think a lot of fans would have liked him, and I think that would have been a good appointment. But Tony's come in, and Tony, it was very much a safe appointment. I think a lot of people felt, and I mean that in a positive way. The instability of recent seasons, obviously they had John Dodd Thomason straight after him, who did 18 months, but then, the last 3 years, pretty much exactly the same time in February, the managers have either left or been sacked. So you had obviously Jon tried to resign and then resigned. Eustace walked out and went to Derby. And then Valérien Ismaël was sacked, the first manager sacked since Owen Coyle in 2017, in fact, which then Tony replaced, came in. So, and then Michael O'Neill. So they've had a lot of instability recently, and Tony will bring a safe pair of hands. Certainly as sort of pre-season's worn on, and you obviously speak to Tony and how charismatic he is and how likable he is. Any sort of not concern, but any sort of reservations from some members of the fan base, which I think were fair. They've sort of melted away, and everyone's really behind Tony. And obviously, a positive result at Wolves only helps to that. With the squad, as you said, I think there's no doubt, and everyone knew this last season. When Rovers have got their best 11 on the pitch, it's competitive and it can finish. There should be a comfortable mid-table team. The problem is when you get to your 13th, 14th, or beyond your 13th, 14th player, there's no depth. The drop off on quality is huge. Tony even said that after Wolves, as he was praising the performance, said we need some help because once the injuries rack up or once you get into playing Saturday, Tuesday in repetition, it becomes a very different team. And that's where the big concern comes from. Because obviously, like you say, a lot of people who don't watch Rovers week in, week out will watch Friday night and think they'll be well clear of the bottom three. And I would agree if you could guarantee me that team's going to be on the pitch every week. But that's obviously not how the Championship works, as we know too well.
Yeah, and to be honest, when you were saying there on like the injuries, the drop off in quality, I would say Middlesbrough our work quite similar to that last year in terms of like we had really good top end Championship players, but underneath that, it probably was lower end League One players, and you've seen with the players that have left, like Sammy Silvera, Alex Gilbert, Marcus Forss. They're in League One, and Alex Gilbert still hasn't got a club, but it looks like he's going to join Charlton. But it shows that Boro were relying on players that probably shouldn't really be in there. But we've tried to address that in the summer. But I've seen with Blackburn as well, 3 players in at the moment, including Sam Morsey, which I think is a really good signing, by the way. I know that he probably wasn't favouring the Blackburn parts initially, but now people are singing his name. How many do you think that Blackburn needs? Because you said you have said 13 players right now. Are you hoping that they can try and get 3 or 4 more in just to make sure they can get over the line?
Yeah, finance is a big part of that. A lot of speculation this week about the goalkeeper Balázs Tott, who was Players Player of the Year last year. He might be going to Celtic, which would inject some funds, but would be a huge loss if he was to go. Don't know if he'll play on Saturday. Tony's doing his presser in the next couple of hours, so we'll learn a bit more about where that is with Celtic and whether he's going to play at the weekend. He's turned down a new deal. He's got 12 months left on his contract. Hungary's number 1. He's going to go. It's just whether they can extract the right value and when it happens in terms of timing. So that will bring some money in, which would be helpful. For me, I still would like another central midfielder. Would be quite keen on Alan Brown, who was obviously at Boro last year and did really well. He's very much near the top of Tony Mowbray's wish list, from what I understand and what we reported earlier in the summer. I still think they might need a starting left winger. They've been linked to Patrick Roberts, who obviously plays on the opposite side, but there's a bit of flexibility in the squad where you could move Morishita over to the left. Tony has spoken like he wants someone with magic in his boots, so they need some more quality in the forward line because they scored 42 goals last season. Only Sheffield Wednesday scored fewer. Massively underperformed their expected goals as part of that. And so they need to obviously inject goals into it. And it's not necessarily just the strikers that need to. They don't get enough goal contributions from some of the supporting players as well. So they definitely need, I would probably say 3 as a minimum. A central midfielder, certainly. I would like a starting left winger and maybe another striker, perhaps. And then obviously a goalkeeper if Balázs does go. So yeah, they've still got a fair bit to do. Morsey's a good signing, I agree with you. They don't have a lot of experience in central midfield. So Morsey's a good signing. As you say, very much has been the pantomime villain, but now Rovers fans completely on board with it, quite happy for him to be there. Their shit house having been the one that they were fighting against. They had that in Lewis Travis before he went to Derby, so happy to engage with that. Jaden Fevrier, they've signed from Stockport, who's very much what I was talking about earlier, young player that Tony can try and develop. He's got a bit of talent. He can beat a man. He can score. He can cut in and curl the ball into the bottom corner. Consistency and end product will be the big thing with him. He's 23. He costs about 500 grand, so it's not exactly a huge outlay, and it's one that they'll hope he can sort of turn as a rough diamond into something more polished.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? When you were saying there around like what Mowbray likes in a team, I think it's very clear that Tony likes 9 soldiers, 2 magicians.
Soldiers and artists, that's the one.
Soldiers and artists, yeah, that's the one. Like he has not changed one bit, but it is a very Tony Mowbray team. He does get the most out of those artists, right? And you've seen it with everyone, including Patrick Roberts, like how much of a good influence he is on him in terms of a player. And then in terms of the soldiers aspect of it, yeah, like I think Sam Morsey for me, I loved him here for a very short time that he was here, and then we moved him on. But honestly, what a great captain like he is. And I think that he's going to add so much value to the Blackburn team this year, 100%. If anything, he's probably one of those signings that will keep you safe, because he's just the level and standards that he asks for is just insane. So, but looking ahead to Saturday, Boro fans coming to Rovers. Obviously, I know it's not really Oh, greatest stomping ground. I always find it really miserable. I've actually never seen a score at Blackburn. And honest to God, it's just honestly, I always leave that stadium just depressed. So hence why I'm not going this weekend. But what can Boro fans expect from Rovers on Saturday? Who's the players that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I think a lot of the sort of elements that Rovers had against Wolves, they can apply to Middlesbrough. Obviously, Middlesbrough are going to come and try and dominate the ball. Obviously, Rovers are at home, so it's slightly different. But I think they will. They'll not sit deep. They didn't have to sit deep against Wolves, but they will counter attack and they will play in transition. And generally, in the last 18 months, Rovers have suited it when they have open space to play into, a little bit more on the break. The right side is completely where Rovers' best work comes from. That's from Morishita, who's the right winger who sort of drops into number 10 positions, and Ryan Alebius, who's the right back, who loves to bomb forward and cause Wolves all manner of problems. And those two are really the danger men for Rovers in terms of how they create the most of their chances. I'd imagine this forward line will be very similar. Andrew Johnson probably lead the line up front. He's got a couple of goals already this season. He's very much your typical number 9 fox in the box. And then they've also got Yuki Hashi, who'll probably be on the bench, who's very much more of a workhorse, really good presser, links play nicely, but doesn't quite have those killer instincts that Good Johnson's got. So that's been sort of the tactical trade-off that Mowbray's had to weigh up in the opening weeks. But Good Johnson played really well, got his goal at Wolves. But yeah, it's that right side where all the danger will come from with Blackburn.
Interesting. Hopefully, Max Afton, who I think is going to probably play there at the weekend, we kept too busy, but he's getting himself up to speed. But it's
interesting, really, because obviously Afton's mainly a lot of the suggestion is that he's better as a wing back than a full back. So the sort of space he might leave behind him, but it's going to be a bit of a cat and mouse to see how ambitious either Lebiosu wants to go, leaving the space for Austin, or vice versa. So that could be an interesting battle.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how we play. To be fair, I think with us, we can alternate between a back 3 or a back 4. Personally, I prefer us as a 4. But obviously we build up in a back 3, 3-2, 4-1. It's still, regardless of what the starting formation is, we'll always try and build up in that way. With Ash Phillips coming in, I'm wondering if it's going to be an Ash Phillips Malanda partnership, but do we want to put a Luke Hale in there as well, because build up might become a bit of a problem.
You've got Callum, obviously, who was at Rovers, who loves to bomb as well. So if you've got both fullbacks, if it's a 4 bombing, then how do you get sort of that free almost? Do you need one of the centre backs dropping in, one of the centre midfielders, dropping in to create that free? And then equally, you're forcing Malanda very wide when he's probably better central. So it'll be interesting to see how he sort of develops that.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen us start to play with more of a box 4, so it's like 2 centre backs and 2 midfielders. But what we found against Lincoln is that it wasn't really press resistant, because you were finding that Kante was playing a little bit too deep along with Beholder, so he couldn't play that combination to get out. So he was forcing us long, and then Lincoln were winning that second ball, and then over time it was just throw-ins, free kicks, corners, constant bombardment, and then they took the lead after 15 minutes. But as the game progressed, you're seeing Boro slowly tweak it, where Borges played a little bit deeper at times, and then when he came off, you've seen our wing backs, we were creating a 2-3. So instead of having the box, it was our wing backs would just play in that half space. So they would pull out the back 5, it would pull out the midfielders to create the space for McGree, which was really good in the second half. But I'm just intrigued to see how we would play it, because especially like you were saying there, the right winger causing us problems. Will it pin the likes of Afton, or will we play over Borges? Or if we play over back 3, that might mitigate it. And then fingers crossed that we can try and create a chance or two. But for me, I think Riley McGree, if he starts on Saturday, I think he'll make a massive difference for us.
Big McGree fan. I think is him and Morris certainly. Hackney got all the plaudits and right, so but McGree and Morris in particular, and I really like McGree. Obviously saw what he did for the winner at the weekend.
Yeah, mate. Honestly, Boro's best player, in my opinion, Riley McGree, so underrated. It's just a shame that we can't keep him fit, injured all the time. And yeah, it's a shame, because he would definitely be a Premier League player if he wasn't injured all the time. But tell me a prediction. What are you going to go for from a scoring standpoint?
I think it'll be 1-1. I think it will be a decent game. I think any idea that Rovers are going to sit back in the same way they did in that sort of 0-0, where Boro missed about 1,600 chances in the first half last time they were at Ewood. I don't think you'll see that. You're not going to see Rovers, I think, absolutely go toe-to-toe and be aggressive and gung-ho and be 2-0 down in 20 minutes. That doesn't suit anyone. Tony obviously knows Boro better than anyone. I think I'm pretty sure he went to the game, in fact, on Saturday. So I think he was in the director's box on Saturday against Lincoln. So as a diehard Boro fan, so he knows this team very well. But you'll not equally see a team defending on the edge of the 6-yard box, even against Wolves when they were 2-1 up. They didn't do that. They obviously regressed a little bit and got deeper as the game wore on and game state dictated. But you won't see a team that does that. But you will see a team that's, will attack in the right moments, press in the right moments, but will equally have a go. So I think they can cause them some problems as they did Wolves at the weekend. Boro's still probably feeling themselves out a little bit with the new signings and how to integrate them, who plays in what sort of roles and how the combinations play. So I think 1-1 would be a good result for Rovers, really, if they could take a couple of points from two tricky opening fixtures.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know. I think for this game, because with Tony, our record is horrendous, and it's rightfully horrendous because he watches every game.
Yeah,
he's such a diehard Boro fan. It's like so hilarious when we play him. It's like, oh god, it doesn't matter who he could manage. Could manage a non-league team, and he'd probably still get one over on us. It's just, yeah, it's crazy. But I think for us, if we score early, that I think for me is so important, because I think we're such a good ball retention team, and when things become difficult and teams score first, yes, we can probably bail ourselves out even more so maybe this year with the strikers that we have, because the Blackburn game last year, my God, the amount of chances that we had early doors and we just couldn't score, and the game just got worse and worse and worse. But I think with the 9 that we have now in Lancashire, it makes a difference. But in possession, I don't think we're as good yet. So it's going to be very interesting. But if we score early, I think I'm going to go 2-0 Boro, I think.
I think that would be, like you say, it opens the game up entirely, and then Rovers have to come out a little bit more and gives Boro more space. And as you say, they're more than capable of circulating the ball and pulling teams apart. So yeah, early goals would definitely make a difference. I think you'll say that about a lot of Boro games this season, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And mate, this has been so good to speak to you, mate. Where can people find you? I know you have a lot of Blackburn Rovers reporting, and that's like the main focus. But Championship Chat, tell people about that, because I think it's a really good show.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as well, obviously I cover Rovers day to day as my job, but myself and George Smith run Championship Chat Podcast, which is a weekly pod covering the Championship in its entirety, obviously covering Boro in great detail as well. And myself and George think they'll have a good year this season. Very keen, very much on the Kim Helberg hype train. So plenty of positive on Boro. You'll hear if you want to check that out. Available on any podcast platform, and also we started a YouTube channel this summer as well. So you'll be able to find us on YouTube if you prefer to watch as well.
Good stuff. Right, okay, well, that's it. Thank you very much, Elliott, for joining me. And to everyone who's watching this, don't forget to subscribe to the Boro Breakdown YouTube channel and our podcast provider. Helps us get found, charged, and all that kind of fun stuff. But for right now, this has been the Boro Breakdown Podcast, and that was our Blackburn Rovers chatter in a pod. Up the Boro.